72 éve, 1947-ben szövevényes belpolitikai háttér miatt kényszerült emigrációba Nagy Ferenc miniszterelnök és a családja. Tervezte, de az 1979. június 12-i váratlan halála miatt soha nem térhetett vissza a szülőföldjére. A hamvai a családi sírhelyen az amerikai Virginia államban vannak. A kisgazdapárti politikus halálának 40. évfordulója alkalmából 2019. júniusban Magyarországon, a Baranya megyei Bisse községben, a szülőházánál volt megemlékezés. A kétrészes dokumentumfilm a családtörténet eddig nem ismert részeit igyekszik feltárni. Amerikai Egyesült Államok, New York, 2022. szeptember 17-e, szombat és dél van. Ezelőtt 75 évvel érkezett a kontinensre Magyarországról, a ma már csak alig 300 lelkes településről, Bisséről Nagy Ferenc, korábbi kisgazda miniszterelnök és családja. A politikai életútja tele van eddig fel nem tárt részekkel. 21.500 irathagyaték, tétel van jelenleg is itt New Yorkban, a Columbia Egyetem könyvtárában. Tartalmilag, történelmileg feltáratlanul, fizikailag digitalizálatlanul. Rengeteg papír, levél, másolat, audio, tehát rádióban elhangzott hangfelvételek, kazettán, és természetesen már filmek is, televíziók, amelyeknek nyilatkozott. Az úti cél nagyon egyszerű. 2019. novemberben fiammal, Kovács Riárddal már jártunk itt a Nemzeti Kulturális Alap támogatásának eredményeként. Egy előkutatást végeztünk a könyvtárban. Akkor döbbentünk rá, hogy mi minden kincs van itt. Nem kell nagy történésznek lenni, sem önjelöltnek, hogy az ember el tudja dönteni. A magyar történelem számos részletkérdése teljesen más megítélést kaphatna, ha ezek az irathagyatékokat egyrészt tartalmilag sikerülne feldolgozni, és hát az örökség szempontjából netán, ha nem is az eredeti példányt, de a másolatokat Magyarországra hazavinni. Kezembe tartok egy útlevelet, ez jól látható, hogy magyar útlevél. Nézzük, kié ez. Henson István Frigyes. Májustól érvényes, méghozzá 10 esztendőre. Velem szemben pedig Henson István Frigyes ül. Most akkor magyar vagy amerikai vagy?
I'm Hungarian American. That's what we would say here, yeah. So.
Miért döntött úgy, hogy magyar útlevelet akar?
Well, basically because Hungarian citizenship was taken away from my family without, without them having any say in it, and they basically came to the U.S. stateless without an identity. And my grandfather, my great-grandfather actually told my mom that he hoped one day that they'd be able to visit Hungary again as Hungarians. And so I helped my mom get her passport so that became a reality, because she always wanted it, and you know, it was a difficult process, but the Hungarian government made it very easy for us, because you know, they helped us with the whole process and everything, and so I think it was something very important for my mom to basically, it meant something special to her, and I just did it with her because it was easier to do together as opposed to separately. So, and then my cousin, his father, I think he kind of had the same idea. So, you know, it's just kind of a symbolic thing, I think, because it was taken away without my family being able to kind of, you know, get it back. And I think it was something that it took long enough to get it back. And for me, it's nice to see my mom be able to kind of realize that again. So.
Mikor vált egyértelművé számára, hogy egy történelmi magyarországi családból származik?
My family kind of kept it very quiet, to be honest. And like I was telling you guys before, in the 50s and 60s, it was very common for American immigrant families to be very American and to only speak English at home and not identify as anything other than American. And so there was a lot of identity crises in the family of being American or being Hungarian. And I think the 50s and 60s was a very difficult period for a lot of people, and I think there was a lot of struggles internally, especially with my grandfather, and you know, I know that he always struggled with losing his you know, his statehood and everything. And I think that my family kind of, it wasn't always, we just wanted to kind of be a normal family, you know, we didn't want to be like celebrities or anything. And I think my mom, you know, was very proud that her grandfather was the prime minister, and I think that was something that she really, you know, she really was very proud of. And you know, he never really made a big deal about it with her. You know, I think that they were very close. And I think when I read his book, it became apparent to me how important he was. And I think, you know, from speaking to a lot of older Hungarians, it's apparent how important he was. And I think, like I said, our family kind of just wanted to be very normal and wanted to be, you know, American, I guess, however you want to say that. But we've always been Hungarian, and you know, there's been a lot of, like I said, identity issues within the family. And I think the speaking of Hungarian at home versus only speaking English, you know, in school or with friends or whatever, to fit in the States, in the United States, and was a big thing in the 60s. And I think my mom was always kind of, I would say kind of shy about it, but you know, later on in her life, I think she, you know, kind of felt more proud about it and realized that it was more important. And I think later in you know, like the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, in the States, we kind of saw reconnecting with your heritage and identity of like who you are and your family is. And I think in the United States, it's like now it's more accepted to have like you know, like a background and a kind of a nationality that's outside of your strictly like your citizenship. So now it's kind of, I think now that history is kind of revealing itself, and you know, he's kind of coming to the forefront. It's kind of all developing a little more rapidly than than I think it was in the past. It kind of was just a little, you know, we knew, but it wasn't anything that was, you know, that was like you wore on your chest or anything like that. It was a very, you know, kind of, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Most 2022. szeptemberében itt vagyunk New Yorkban, a Columbia Egyetem könyvtárában, és azt tudjuk, hogy 75 éve olyan dokumentumok 21.500 tételben sorakoznak itt, amelyek Európában sem, Amerikában sem, és sajnos Magyarországon sem ismernek. A miniszterelnök úrnak, Nagy Ferencnek ikerlányai 1950-ben születtek már itt New Yorkban, Zsófi és Zsuzsanna. Mit tudunk róluk?
Yeah, well, they're my great aunts, and we know them as Sophie and Susie, and yeah, I've always grown up with them. They've always been kind of matriarchal figures in my family. They're very close with my mom. After my grandmother passed away, they became much more close with my mother, and yeah, they're living in Idaho now. They were living in Northern Virginia for a while, so we all were kind of stayed in the area in Virginia, and they moved to Idaho recently just to. They wanted to be out in nature in the country, and they like how beautiful it is out there, and I think it's a lot cheaper to live out there too because Virginia is getting more expensive. So, and yeah, they spoke Hungarian at home when they were younger. And they still can, you know, understand some Hungarian and they can read a little bit, but they mostly speak English. And, you know, they're very proud of being Hungarian, but at the end of the day, you know, they were raised to be American. And so, like I was saying before, is, you know, I think there's, you know, they're very private people, and I don't think they like being in the limelight or in the spotlight. So, but yeah, they're great. They're very important in my family on my mom's side of things. So yeah, they did some different things. So they ran some stores in Virginia, Blockbuster video stores. They were the managers of the region, and they basically had a couple retail locations that they ran together. They were always together. They've always been together, like kind of as a unit. We've always thought of them as like a unit. So, and they basically, yeah, they just worked. They've worked their whole life, and you know, they've just been very, very close figures in our family. Very important to our family unit. I think they're best friends and identical twins, and that bond is very apparent to the two of them. They're best friends. They're retired. I think they're doing some things on the side, like little, you know, jobs, but I don't think they're basically retired, yeah, so, yeah.
Soha nem akartak az ikrek Magyarországra látogatni? Mit tudunk erről?
It was always a bit too expensive to bring the whole family to Hungary together because we all kind of were you know, working class, and everybody kind of, you know, my mom was a teacher and they worked at the video stores, so they, you know, we didn't really have enough money to do like a big family trip there. And also, you know, there was kind of this, I think, like I was saying before, an identity thing of being American, and in that time it was kind of drilled into you culturally to be American and to be, you know, to become an American despite your previous identity or where your family came from. And I think that kind of always stuck with a lot of family members. And even on my dad's side, the same thing, you know, the assimilation, having to assimilate to be, you know, to fit in. It was a very big kind of American mentality, which was something that was really hard for generations to kind of get over until even now. I mean, now people are kind of more identifying more with their roots and their past and that kind of thing. So I think, you know, they would love to go to Hungary, I think, just to see, you know, where Nagypapa grew up. We call him Nagypapa, he's my dédapám, but I would just, you know, it's expensive, you know. You gotta coordinate the whole thing, and I think the whole process and idea is just very overwhelming for them to be able to do it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they would like to go, and if I gave them 2 tickets and took care of everything financially for them, they probably would go. So my great aunts basically, from when I knew them, I always knew them as working in the video store. They worked at there's a video store in the US called Blockbuster that used to rent videos, and they both ran a store, their own store. So they, like I said, they were always kind of doing the same thing but together and separate, and they both you know, kind of were in charge of their own stores. And then later on they retired, and then they started working at PetSmart, which is a pet store, and they were doing the same thing. You know, so they always were managing stores and running the ship and running stuff. Yeah, so basically. But before that, before I was a little kid, they did a whole bunch of different things, and my mom kind of knows more about that. And but we always knew them as working at the video store and the pet stores, so being in charge of those.
Nagy Ferenc miniszterelnök és felesége halála óta nagyobb családi összejövetelek voltak?
No, not really, no. I mean, our family's been kind of split up in different, you know, respects, and I think yeah, we haven't really had anything like that. I think, yeah, not that I can remember, no. I think that on the death of my grandmother, probably was the last time everybody was together, but that was very difficult for everyone. So I don't think it was really very much of a family reunion. It was more of a very somber occasion, and you know, I was too small to really remember it very well, but I do remember, you know, the whole thing being very heavy, and that was probably the last time that everybody was together. So, yeah.
Mutassa be kicsit saját magát, a mostani életét itt New Yorkban.
Wow. I've done a lot of stuff. I've been here for about 15 years. I moved here from Annapolis, from Maryland. I got my bachelor's degree in art studies, and I studied a bunch of languages also. I've studied abroad a bunch, and I did some study abroads in Germany, Hungary, and while I've been here, I've worked at the Museum of Modern Art. I've worked at a bunch of different cultural institutions. I worked at the Botanical Gardens in the Bronx, and now I work at a large gallery called David Zwirner, and I'm working in the research library as the library coordinator. And I've been doing that for a couple years now, and yeah, I've mostly been in the arts and involved in the arts, and mostly art history, like as what I studied in school. But I also studied philosophy too, so I have basically a dual degree, and I guess my day-to-day, I'll go for a bike ride, I'll go to museums, I'll go to, I don't know, farmer's market. Just enjoy the city, really. I like living here, and there's so many things to do, and yeah, Annapolis is a little boring, so that's why I don't really live there anymore. But it's nice to raise a family, but I like it here a little more. And it's, you know, it's funny that this whole project has kind of, you know, shown me how many places in New York my family has landed. So it's kind of nice to kind of be in that same kind of zone. And you know, I started learning Hungarian here at the Hungarian House, and I don't think anywhere else in the country other than Pittsburgh you can really learn Hungarian other than in New York City. So I have to say being here helped me do that too. And what else have I been doing? I guess just living life, I guess. And my rent here is really cheap, so that's why I live here, believe it or not.
Érte el meglepetés itt a Columbia Egyetem könyvtárában a családi történet nagyon rövid áttekintése után?
It was very interesting, and a lot of the papers that I saw, it was really nice to see his handwriting, you know, like on paper, and it taught me a lot about my grandmother, and I didn't really know a lot about how close they were as far as her encouraging him to publish the book, and you know, her helping him like as an assistant and secretary on his travels abroad. I knew that you know, she was involved a little bit, but these papers were kind of showed me how involved that she really was, and how encouraging she was for him to kind of write his book and how to write it and everything. And yeah, it was also there were some shocking moments that I saw, you know, politically, how things panned out in these papers. And yeah, it was really interesting to see everything kind of, you know, like a tangible kind of copy, a record. It was nice to see all the postcards and all of his travels. And I actually didn't know how much my grandmother traveled with him, so that was interesting too, to see. Yeah.
Bármikor is gondolt-e arra, hogy esetleg a Nagy Ferenc hagyaték feldolgozásával többet foglalkozzon részletesebben, akár félig hivatásszerűen, vagy szponzortámogató közreműködésével?
It crossed my mind earlier on, and before you guys started doing this, to kind of take a look. And I was doing some genealogy research basically on both sides of my family, because my other side of my family is also Hungarian as well, but the borders were redrawn, and then they became Slovakian, and then they became something else, and then Austro-Hungary kind of changed its borders, so everybody had different identities. So I was kind of trying to figure out who came from where and where they, you know, the roots and everything. And as I was doing that genealogy research on my dad's side, I was also kind of going down my mom's side as well. And as far as getting like grants or professional like sponsorship, I think it's more, that seems like more of a sponsorship on the Hungarian side of things than it would be in the American side of things. But there is a, you know, political science grants and things like that that I could, you know, someone could pursue, because, you know, he was directly involved in political science and was a very prominent political figure in political science. So I'm sure you could go that avenue in securing funding in that regard. But you know, I think after reading his book, I kind of got more curious, and I think that this experience here, my cousin and I tried to come here before the pandemic and visit the archives and to look at the Nagy papers, and unfortunately we didn't get a response. So this is a good opportunity for us to actually, you guys really helped us kind of secure a slot to look at everything, which was great. Yeah, so we did make an attempt to kind of check out his papers and everything, but you know, they're very busy here, so I'm sure that our requests kind of just maybe fell by the wayside. But yeah, professionally, I mean, full time, I know that it requires a lot of time and attention and dedication and grant writing skills and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's definitely been, I've definitely learned a lot from the citizenship route of things, you know, all of the documents I've procured and everything to get my mom and I passports, and you know, seeing all the birth certificates and all the death certificates and marriage certificates, and that's been really really cool to be able to kind of follow everything, and a lot of the research that I've done as far as genealogically kind of goes hand in hand with his political legacy and his you know, so but yeah, in order to do it professionally, I think I would need to dedicate a lot of time, a lot of time and energy to it. So, and it does, you know, it does take a lot of time, and you guys have put a lot of time into it. So, I'm very thankful for that, I have to say. So.
Azon kevés amerikaiak közé tartozik, akik már 3-szor voltak Magyarországon. Nagy Ferenc miniszterelnök születésének 120. évfordulója 2023. október 8-án lesz. Mit gondol, találkozunk Magyarországon, akár Bissén?
I hope so. Yeah, I'm going to try to save some money up and come for that, because that would be a very, very special occasion. I think that would be really, really cool. And hopefully, you know, maybe my cousin can come, and I'll tell my mom, but you know, hopefully her health will determine if she can come or not. But that'd be a really great opportunity to make it down to Bicêtre, and especially with good people, and you know, it would be nice reason to go down there. I've always wanted to go, but you know, there was an official state visit that my mother and I were supposed to go down to Bicêtre, and like a commemorative visit, and my mom's health unfortunately prevented that from happening. So yeah, we never got to do that. But so hopefully this will make up for that. It'd be really cool. Yeah, thank you. Köszönöm szépen. A viszontlátásra.
When I was younger, I used to run around our house up in Maine, and in the attic just discovered kind of these old documents, and then we had copies of my grandfather's book, and I found that, and I remember bringing it to my father, and he sort of took that as a moment to be like, you know, you have an important grandfather. And so I think I just kept asking questions, and then the time when I knew I had a really important grandfather was when I was at school, and I had a teacher. This was when I was in 4th grade. We all had to give like a little, you know, report on our family history, and she knew from my older brothers how important my grandfather was. I sort of knew, but she kind of encouraged me to like really, really reach out, and it ended up that my dad came to the school to actually kind of give a report to our class, and he brought in probably some items from the actual collection, to be honest, but you know, showing the Life magazine, showing the Evening Post, and various photographs while he spoke with us in the 4th grade class. So that's kind of when it all hit me that like, okay, like I don't just have an interesting grandfather, that there's maybe a little bit of a legacy there.
Tisztában volt azzal, hogy milyen drámai körülmények között hagyták el a nagyszülei és az édesapja is Magyarországot, amikor ide kijöttek Washingtonba?
So, around the same time I learned about the history, my dad kind of kept that part out. And it wasn't until I was probably a teenager, 12 or 13, when, again, kind of just going through, you know, documents and I think online searches, when I realized that it was my dad, that, yeah, he got kidnapped. And so for a long time I didn't realize the details and how dramatic it was. To be honest, it's still a little bit, you know, that's what I was kind of reading the most of in the collection, is sort of the days leading up to it and the immediate aftermath, because I think in general there's still, you know, that's what history is, right? Trying to figure out and discover that truth. So there's still some questions, you know, that I have just in general from the family point of view. But no, I mean, for a long time I didn't realize how dramatic it was. But then when I did, you know, I had a lot more questions.
Arriving at New York after the fall of his government, former Premier Nagy of Hungary. For a time he was separated from his small son, but on resignation of his post they were reunited. In an obviously difficult situation, it is essential for Hungary to live in future on peaceful terms with all her neighbors.
Kérem, meséljen a szüleiről, mivel foglalkoztak, hogyan éltek hétköznaponként.
My dad, you know, really smart man, and my mom, she was born in Massachusetts, in a town called Fitchburg, so that's in New England. They met in Boston when my dad was going to school at Boston University. He was working at basically what they call like a soda jerk. So it was like a little diner, and my mom kind of, you know, saw him one day being really kind to, it was a couple that would come in, sorry, not a couple, the mother and then the son, and they didn't really have much money, and so she would buy one tea bag and then share it between the two, you know, cups of tea, and my dad would just kind of slip him an extra tea bag. But as far as like what life was like growing up, you know, my dad, he was a lot of things. He worked at Digital, a company in Merrimack, New Hampshire. He was in human resources there for a long time. He worked in the insurance industry for a little bit too. And then he kind of struck out on his own as kind of an entrepreneur, opening up a sports sort of business in a small town called Hollowell, Maine. And then after that, he basically worked kind of, you know, odd jobs and anything that he could. Unfortunately, he wasn't really into technology. So I think he always felt that his skill set didn't necessarily align with maybe like, you know, the modern world. So he was always doing a lot of more people person type jobs, you know, working with selling, basically selling things to people, because he was really a natural salesman. I guess he got that from my grandfather. And then my mom, she did a lot of, you know, kind of just, you know, mom, home, typical American stuff, work, you know, some hours as a secretary or administrative assistant, and then, but mostly her job was to take care of the three boys, so myself and my two older brothers. So daily life, man, when you have three boys in a family, a lot of it revolves around them. So we were always playing sports. There was always some sort of an after-school activity that they would run around to and take us to. And besides that, it was just a lot of, you know, trying to get together as often as possible as a family, doing various things. You know, it could be as simple as watching football together on a Saturday, or, you know, going to watch my mom ring bells at church mass during the Christmas season. There's a lot of things that were going on. I mean, kind of a typical, you know, upbringing with, you know, the occasional bouts of drama that come with having two boys, or three boys, so two older brothers, I should say.
Kettő fiú testvére van, merre élnek, mit csinálnak, mivel foglalkoznak a fiúk?
Yeah, so I'll start with the oldest brother, Steve. He lives, Ishvan, yeah, he lives down in Ashland, Virginia. So that's about an hour south of Washington, D.C. He works at Fidelity Investments, so a large financial corporation. Basically, he's been doing finance for as long as he's got out of college. He was an accounting major. So he has a family of, 6 kids, his wife Nicole. So what he does, aside from working, I mean, he's a family man. So he's constantly, you know, taking care of the kids, making sure they're having fun, but also going to school. And so that's Steve. And then Alex, he's up in where I grew up in Gardner, Maine, and that's where we lived for a long time. So he lives there with his partner named Kelly, and they have 3 children also. And they are still younger, so he's taking care of him. He works at a bicycle shop. He's very mechanically inclined, and basically it's the same thing. Their family, you know, comes first, so there's a lot of making sure the kids are getting to soccer practice and hockey practice and all that stuff. And yeah, when we were growing up, you know, it was really awesome having 3, you know, kind of 2 older brothers in the house, because there was always something to do, there was always jokes, there was always laughing, there was always just something going on. It's a little different because so Steve's 10 years older than me and Alex is 7 years older, so I was very young, but it was still good. And now we talk about maybe once or twice a week, depending on the situation, at least texting all the time too. But you know, that's how things go. I mean, they're down, they have their family to take care of, and, you know, but we still make an effort to make sure that we can at least all talk to each other.
Járt már Magyarországon, mi ösztönözte, hogy pont oda látogasson? Milyen élményekkel zárta az utazást?
It was, in one word, amazing. I loved just sort of the atmosphere. Just immediately, when the second I set foot in Hungary, I don't know, there was a moment of feeling at peace, or kind of felt like the story had kind of come full circle, because I'd heard so much about it. We had started off, we were in Austria, so we took a train from you know, Austria or Vienna to get into Budapest, and right from the train station all the way to the hotel, it was just, you know, me gawking, because I'd heard so much about this beautiful city, and it did not disappoint. And so yeah, when I was there, I made sure to, of course, visit Parliament and do as many things as I could to, you know, see kind of what was going on with my grandfather and if he was kind of there or not. And so between various museums and Parliament, it was really, really, really cool. And, you know, I felt almost a bit honored to see that his legacy is sort of still being, you know, kept, and people are still recognizing, you know, sort of his importance in the history of the Magyar people. And man, it was, and then I can't get over how beautiful the city is. You know, the bridges, the walking, so many photos. It was gorgeous, breathtaking, amazing, all in one. I took a nice photo of the gold ashtray holder, the ashtrays that they have for those cigars. I don't think they allow smoking in there anymore, but part of me was thinking I could see my grandfather putting his cigar down in that ashtray and kind of going into session and then, you know, coming out. And I thought that was a fun, like, I don't know, you're not going to see that in the United States Congress, I know that.
Mivel foglalkozik itt most New Yorkban?
I went to school, I was in college, I was an English major, and I got out of school and went into journalism. I was working as what they call a copy editor / paginator. So basically I would be designing the front page of like a newspaper. So the written word has always been something I've loved and been fascinated with. So then from there I ended up going to magazines. And that's how I ended up in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn for 14 years, working at a Cigar Aficionado magazine, and basically wrote, you know, and covered the cigar industry. And so I did that for a long time, 14 years, like I said, and then I decided during the pandemic that I wanted to switch careers. So I went back to school for a little bit, and now I'm what they call a content strategist at a large company, finance company called Northwestern Mutual. So they have an office here in New York, and I live in New Jersey, and, you know, I'll come into the city every now and then or work from home, and basically just that's kind of my day-to-day, you know, work life. Other than that, I have a fiance, and Natalie and I were getting married next August, and you know, at some point we do plan on going back to Hungary. Just not sure when, but it's in the cards still.
El tudná elképzelni azt, hogy hosszabb, rövidebb ideig Magyarországon él, ott dolgozik, netán érdekli-e a politika, a diplomácia?
Politics, I've always had a big interest in that. I mean, basically, when I was a kid, you know, where I grew up in Maine, very small state. So I still remember having, you know, a standing member of the Senate coming to my you know, little tiny elementary school to speak with us. So it left an impression on me that, you know, and then especially combine that with learning about the legacy, that, you know, I've always been interested in politics because despite what everybody thinks, it all affects us. You know, some sort of policy that gets made now, 2 years from now, we don't know necessarily how it's going to, the consequences of that policy, right? So there's something fascinating about how we have this sort of giant, you know, mess of humanity, but we're all come together and follow something called government. And so I guess short answer, politics has always interested me. Would I ever go into politics? Possibly. It's always been a fascinating sort of a thing. I feel like I do appreciate sort of our leaders who are able to do it well. Just seems that there's not a lot of great leaders nowadays. But as far as living in Hungary, yeah, absolutely have considered it. One of my earliest questions to my dad was, would we ever go back? And I think it was a very tough and difficult question for him to sort of face because there's just so many emotions and so much, you know, sort of gravitas that goes with answering that. But I think for me, personally, I think enough time has passed that yes, I would like to go over to Hungary. You know, would I get involved in Hungarian politics? That's I don't know if that's my place, but I would love to maybe live there. But yeah, I think that answers the question, right?